Indescribable Publishing presents The Veiled, Book 1 of the Shilund Saga. Text copyright 2014 by Jennifer Osborn. Story narrated by the author. Prologue. Late August. Get the lead out. I'd like to make it to a good spot before it gets dark. From the looks of it, we don't have long, Jack Day yelled over his shoulders to his two closest friends, Chris Jenkins and Adam Hensley, annoyed at the situation. The men carried heavy packs as they moved along the uneven ground, miles into the dense wood of Presque Isle, Maine. All three were rookie firefighters. It was the first night in months they had had off together, and they decided to celebrate with a camping trip. Where guys their age usually had 2 or more years left of college, they were already beginning their probationary period in their chosen occupation. All had military-style haircuts and muscular builds, though Jack stood taller than the other two, with coffee-colored hair and icy blue eyes. Chris had coal-black hair with eyes so brown you could hardly see the pupils. The last of the three, Adam, seemed to fit more with the California surfer types, flaxen hair and ocean water blue eyes. The sun had just retreated behind the hill line beyond them, and the sky had dimmed, hints of fuchsia, gold, and amber ushering out the retreating light. Yeah, Chris complained directly behind Jack. It was your idea to go this deep into the woods in the first place, Day. I have no idea why you'd want a primitive camp anyway. I would have camped by our car if it were left up to me. Jack turned and glared at Chris, and opened his mouth to speak right as Adam reached forward and flicked Chris in the ear. Whiner. Chris stopped walking. He froze like he wanted to wheel around and punch Adam in the chest. Instead, he replied, Do that again and I'll show you what real whining's all about. He took a few steps before another flick hit his ear. Abruptly, he spun around to catch Adam, but Adam was already running away, his blond head jolting up and down as he tried to escape, hefting his heavy pack across the clumpy ground littered with branches and downed trees. Chris chased him while attempting to balance his own large backpack, but it proved too difficult. He toppled to the ground, landing so hard that a strong gust of air left his lungs in a burst. Jack and Adam's laughter echoed off the trees. Chris appeared to stifle a comment as he unhooked his pack from his waist and tried to wiggle his arms free of the tight straps, but the snug pack resisted and held him firmly in place. Easy as taking candy from a baby. He looks like a turtle knocked over on its shell, Adam mocked, as he gazed over Chris with his hands on his knees. Jack laughed and offered a hand to help Chris up. No, thank you, Chris shot back, before he eventually worked himself free of his pack and made it to his feet. How is it that you two can carry 110 pounds of hose up 5 stories without losing your breath, and you can't balance a 35-pound bag on your shoulders? Jack challenged as he took off his own pack, dropping it with a thud in the tall grass. Chris shot Jack an irritated look, but he didn't reply. Instead, he glanced around. How about here, Jack? Looks good enough to me. They scanned the area from where they stood at the edge of a small grassy clearing, lined by lumbering tupelos, maples, and basswood trees. In between were skinny pines reaching high up into the sky. Jack nodded. Okay, if it'll keep you both from complaining. Nah, he'll still whine, Adam said as he ran by Chris, flicking him once more in the ear. Chris gave chase, since he was free to run this time, disappearing into the brush after his friend. Adam's taunts about Chris's manhood echoed, and Jack could hear their scuffling, realizing Chris had finally caught Adam. Chris broke through the tree line, dragging Adam back in a headlock. Adam struggled, but Chris's hold was firm. Where do you want this trash? Chris asked innocently, managing to restrain a squirming Adam with his arms. They were always punching each other, playing practical jokes and making each other's lives challenging. Ignoring them, Jack shook his head and began unloading his pack, smiling. Too bad Henry couldn't make it, Jack said as he reclined against a log and watched the dancing fire while it crackled and popped. He took a drink of his beer and then tossed a pine cone into the blaze. The crickets lulled him into contentment with their rhythmic song, and the air had just settled into a cooler temperature. Things couldn't be any better for Jack. What was up with that anyway? Adam asked. He looked like he had sucked on a lemon when you asked him. He stared up into the clear night sky, a look of awe crossing his face. The stars were pinholes against a black blanket. Why would he want to miss this? I don't know. He said he had some stuff to do. I think Sheriff Pine had him working on something, Jack shrugged. Probably wants him to organize the property locker in the sheriff's office alphabetically, Chris chuckled. Does he realize he has OCD? Henry's not OCD, Jack retorted. Just organized. Chris gave him a droll stare. He probably has his closet arranged by color. Jack couldn't help it. He laughed. Henry was the fourth member of this motley posse. Where Chris, Adam, and Jack were firefighters, Henry was a deputy, and they were all inseparable. They hung out every free moment they had, and almost always at Jack's house. Adam sat up. He's probably like that crazy freak in the Julia Roberts movie. What's it called? You watch Julia Roberts movies? Jack snorted. Adam's eyebrow rose. Well, once my sister made me, he said defensively. But that's not the point. Pretty Woman? Chris guessed. Jack shot Chris a surprised look. Chris shrugged. No, that wasn't it. You know, the crazy husband that likes his labels turned out on his canned foods? Jack laughed. Sleeping with the enemy? Adam perked up, the light reflecting off his hair. He waved his hands around dramatically. Yeah, that's it. He's probably like that crazy husband playing freaky classical music and rearranging his towels so they line up. Jack threw an empty bottle at Adam while stifling a laugh. The bottle hit his shin. Stop, he's nothing like that. At least he keeps his stuff organized. When was the last time you mustered on a practice run and had everything together? Chief Merchant is going to have your butt in a sling if you don't stop misplacing stuff. Ow, Chris complained and rubbed his legs. I know where everything is. I just use a different organizational method than most. He smiled and glanced up again regarding the sky. Jack's gaze followed Adam's, and he studied the expanse above him. It was so dark and clear here, so dark that millions of stars were visibly strewn across the expanse. The only variation was the sliver of moon hanging low. In an odd way, Jack could truly breathe here, all the worries of work and life washed away in beer and laughter, far away from everything. A strange wet thud from Chris's direction caught Jack's attention. It took a moment for him to figure out what he was looking at. Blood ran from Chris's mouth in a flood. His lips gaped like a fish out of water. He reached up slowly to a spear protruding 10 inches out of his chest, lightly touching it like he was trying to figure out what it was and how it got there. Then as Chris's confused eyes bore into Jack's, he slumped over. A rush of wind came from his left, and when Jack jerked his head around, he caught a glimpse of Adam's kicking legs as they disappeared into the brush, an anguished cry bellowing out. Jack jumped up, and pain lanced his side. He started to look down, but fell backwards over a log. A flash of green appeared before his eyes, and then everything went black.